G'day and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to go through how I go about caulking. This one's for you, Ray. This is a skill that I think everybody should have because everyone's got some moldy silicone on a splashback or in a bathroom somewhere that they'd love to cut out and reapply. So today I'm hopefully going to be able to teach you how to do that. Keep your fingers out of it. They get in there a little bit, but do not apply silicone with your fingers. Let's caulk. Two main types of silicone I like to use. The Map-I stuff, which is a number and a name system. So it's great for bathrooms because it's mold resistant, but also the number corresponds with the grout. So when you're ordering the grout for your tiles, you can also order the silicone and it'll match, which is great. I still think the MaxiSeal is a better product, but not by a lot. They've both got anti-mold. This is just a little bit thicker, so it's a bit easier to tool off. It's just a bit trickier to work out your colors because they're just named things. Other things you will need: a Stanley knife with a very sharp blade. Life's too short for blunt blades. A quality caulking gun. Now, when I say quality, this is like $25 maybe. Don't buy a $5 one. They just don't push consistently enough and it makes your job a lot harder. So $20, $25 range is fine. You want some methylated spirits, don't use terps, use metho. Metho evaporates, so use this to clean everything up and get it all ready. And if things go really wrong, you can use this to clean out all the silicone quickly and then you can still work back over it in a little while because it does evaporate and dry. A nice clean cloth to keep your things clean, your hands, your tools, and to clean all the area. You need wipe off boards, or I use magazines or newspaper because you can just keep peeling the sheets off as they fill up. A spray bottle, and yes, dish soap. Some people don't like this system. I still think it's the best system if you do it properly, and that is making sure that the silicone is fully adhered to both surfaces before you spray it. Here we have 3 different sizes of paddle pop sticks. I use this for 95% of the stuff I do. It really is just a perfect size for all the caulking I do, or almost all the caulking I do. I've got this for external stuff sometimes, or bigger gaps that I need to fill. It's just a bigger one. And then I've got the really small one, which I use for really tight spots where I want the minimal amount of caulk in there. This is my caulking tub. Every time I buy silicone or no more gaps or any product that comes in these tubes, you get nozzles with them, and I just keep these nozzles in here. Therefore, whenever I am finished with this for the day, I'll leave that tip on there. The silicone dries in there, but it doesn't dry all the way down at the base. When I'm ready to use it again, I'll take that off. If I can clean the tip out, I will. If not, I'll throw it away and get another tip. I've got lots of tips in here. Masking tape. Now, we may show some masking tapes. It's probably a whole separate video. I don't like to use masking tape in wet areas when I'm caulking, or really anywhere, unless I absolutely have to. The spots I do use it most commonly is on 2 flat surfaces where I can mask both sides of it, put the silicone in and then wipe it off. If you use masking tape on a right angled type caulk setup and you put masking tape on that edge and then masking tape on the bottom edge and then you put the silicone in there and you wipe it off, no matter how hard you wipe it off, there's going to be the thickness of the masking tape, there's going to be that edge of silicone on top. What happens is that gathers water and it gathers soap scum and it gets moldy really quick. So you'll find that anywhere where they've used masking tape in your bathrooms, that's where the mold's going to grow in your silicone quickest. Some things to be mindful of is these silicones are, I think, acetone based or solvent based. Now, if you've got a natural stone surface you're putting this on, you don't want to use these. You want to get a neutral cure silicone or a natural stone silicone. They're specific for that. If you're unsure about what surface is you're putting it on, do a little test somewhere that's nice and discreet and leave it for at least 48 hours because it does take quite a while for whatever's in this stuff to eat into your stone. It will leave a mark. So do a little test before you push on with it. So a fun fact about these silicones, I had a friend who had a brand new polished stone concrete benchtop, and he was ready to caulk, so he dropped the caulking stuff off. He sat 5 tubes of silicone on top of his bench top. He left, he came back the next day, he picked up his 5 tubes, he then had 5 rings. It had actually off-gassed through the bottom of the tube and eaten away at the finish on that stone bench top, and they had to refinish it. So whenever you're using these tubes, be careful where you put them, or put them down this way. So where two right angle surfaces meet, we don't always use silicone. When we want to paint it, we use a gap filler. So this has been gapped and all the way up there has been gapped and then it's been painted. So today we're going to be caulking these windows to the reveal. So we're making sure that everything is dust free and nice and clean, no water, no grease, no oil, no lumps and bumps, nice and clean. And also we're cleaning the area in front of it and around it to make sure that no dust and debris can get blown onto our wet silicone. And if somebody walks past, dust doesn't get kicked up. So we're really cleaning the surface well. This has all been vacuumed already. So we've just got a rag, nice and clean, going through and making sure it's all nice and clean, ready for silicone to stick to it. So when you're doing this sort of job, you need to think about which direction water runs because of the way we apply our caulking. And we're going to start with bottom to make sure that we don't then spray it and have the water run down and then stop the silicone from sticking down the bottom there. Now, we've got our colour match for our hardwood flooring. We're going to put a new tip on it because that tip is full of silicone. Always have lots and lots of tips so that you can just keep replacing them once they get full or clogged or worn out. Now some people like to cut this on a 45-degree angle, some people like to cut it square. I like to go somewhere in between, so I'll go about a 22.5-degree angle, just eyeballed, and your aim is to cut this in one cut without any jagged edges and cut it the same size as the caulking bead you're about to apply. There we go. So we're just going to clean that up a little bit. Might just flatten that off a little bit. I think that's too steep, that angle. So we're just going to flatten that off. And that's a pretty good cut. And we're trying to get a similar round to our paddle pop stick. So another little tip is to, with a permanent texter, to mark on your nozzle the long point of your angle so that you know which part of the nozzle should be facing you. Rightio, so now we want to squeeze out a bit of silicone. If you're reusing a tube, you want to make sure that it's coming out nice and smooth and it hasn't gone off a little bit. Now whenever you're starting caulking, you want to have a nice clean tip. So I'll always wipe the tip and clean my finger off there. Make sure we're starting with a fresh every time. Okay. So aside from the paddle pop stick, I would say the most important skill to have is when you're applying silicone to use the nozzle to force the silicone in and wipe off as you go. Every time I'm applying silicone, I'll think to myself, I'm going to get this so good with the nozzle that I don't need to use the paddle pop stick. I will still inevitably use the paddle pop stick to neaten it up, but I'm making sure I get really good adhesion on both surfaces by forcing the silicone in and wiping it off a bit with the nozzle. This way, when I spray it, no water will get in behind there, like you'll see on the diagram on the left, and stop the silicone from sticking to that surface. And if that happens, sometimes you can smooth it over and you don't know that it hasn't stuck, but it'll come away a bit, water will get in behind there, or mold will grow faster. Every time I stop, I push my button and I clean my tip every time. Now, if I was a beginner, I would probably suggest stopping there. You don't want to do too much because this silicone can get a skin on it and then it gets really hard to clean and tool off. But I've done enough of it, I know I've got time to do a bit more, so I'm going to finish this run. That's a really good pace right there. If you go too slow, it gets a bit bumpy. You've got to get to know your own caulking gun. See, it's coming out a bit heavy there. Making sure when you're not using your caulking gun, you lay it on top of your newspaper or your wipe-off board, because anything that oozes out here, you don't want anything up on the floor. And if you miss that and it sticks there, then it's there for a long time. All right, so phase 2 is to check over all of your silicone that you've just applied and making sure that it's adhered everywhere on both surfaces and there's no gaps, no spots where it has jumped out and you're not actually touching both surfaces. So there's a tiny spot there that is not quite adhered down the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray my finger with my spray, and then I'm going to very, very carefully, just gently wipe my finger over it and push it down to make sure that it's adhered properly. Okay, so now I'm going to check the whole run to make sure everything is good. Yep, I've got good adhesion on both sides. I'm happy with that. Right, now I'm ready to spray. So you make sure you put your water in the spray bottle first and then you put your dishwashing liquid, otherwise it just froths up all over the top. So put about half a teaspoon in there and that's plenty. So I'm going to spray everything, being careful if I'm going to apply silicone up here to not spray up there, because then it won't stick to it. Or what we're going to do in this one is we're going to come back tomorrow, and we're going to do that tomorrow or later in today after this silicone down here is dried and the surface is dried. Rightio, so now we have our paddle pop stick. I like to give it a bit of a spray, help to stop silicone sticking to it. Now, I am going to come in flat to the floor first, and I'm going to keep this at 90 degrees to what I'm wiping off. Just very gently push it in, and I'm going to pull straight across there. Once you get a bit of silicone build up, wipe it off on the newspaper, make sure your tool's clean, and then I'm going to continue this. Just keep wiping it off. Now I'm going to come around this corner. Very carefully, I'm going to make sure I don't dig that in too far. So you've got to sort of finesse it around the corner, just gently. And then follow the contours of the architrave. Here we go. I'm going to wipe that bit off because we don't need that. Check over everything. You can do another pass. Now the beauty of the paddle pop stick is, providing you don't change the angle, it gets to a point where you can't pull any more out. If you use your finger pushes into that gap, into the round, and you pull out all the silicone, and it also doesn't have a hard edge on it, so it smears the silicone around, which is not what we want. We want a nice, clean, consistent radius. All right, so now that we've wiped everything off, we've finessed our internal corners, because this is on a hardwood floor, we don't want that water sitting there any more than it has to, so we're very carefully with our microfiber cloth, just getting rid of the excess water, making sure we don't hit the silicone. So I'm staying a good 5 or 10 mil away from that silicone. I'm just wiping up the excess water so it doesn't sit on this flooring, because that's not good for it. So we've gone a little bit heavy here. So what I'm probably going to have to do is I'll probably have to wipe with my paddle pop stick down here, and then it's going to ooze out a bit there, and then I'll have to wipe from the top as well, just to make sure we get a nice consistent bead. Now we're all finished. We've done the bottoms, the sides, the top. We're really happy with our results. We've cleaned up our excess water, we've cleaned up our worksite. Now we've closed these doors. We're going to leave them closed. No one's going to walk in this whole area for 12 hours, so no dust and debris gets washed or blown into this caulking.